The United Kingdom has declared its readiness to deploy ground forces and aircraft to Ukraine if a ceasefire is reached. During a joint press conference with US President Donald Trump, Prime Minister Keir Starmer stated that, in his view, this is the only way to secure lasting peace.
The UK is ready to put troops on the ground and planes in the air to support a deal, working together with our allies, because it's the only way the peace will last. We must do the right thing. There can be no peace that rewards the aggressor. History must be on the side of the peacemaker, not the invader. Keir Starmer, Prime Minister of the United Kingdom.
Meanwhile, Ireland and Switzerland have also expressed their readiness to send troops to Ukraine. In addition, the Baltic and Nordic countries, as well as Germany and France, have agreed to contribute forces.
There is a general agreement that in order to guarantee the ceasefire, it will be necessary to have European troops in Ukraine, and UK, Germany and France are already willing to do that, but other member states of the European Union will contribute as well. Those troops will arrive after the ceasefire in order to guarantee that ceasefire is respected. But if we want this ceasefire to be respected, we need a US backup.
However, the US appears unlikely to guarantee military support for potential British peacekeeping forces in Ukraine in the event of renewed Russian aggression. According to Donald Trump, the UK troops in Ukraine will be able to take care of themselves. During the press conference, Prime Minister Starmer also announced that representatives from 18 European countries will gather in London to discuss, among other topics, a peace agreement for Ukraine. According to UK Prime Minister's office, the summit will build on the results of two emergency meetings held in Paris in mid-February, organized by French President Emmanuel Macron.
The Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, is using the summit to advance European action on Ukraine, signaling our collective and unwavering support for securing a just and lasting peace and a long-term agreement that ensures Ukraine's future sovereignty and security. From a report by the UK Prime Minister's office, AFP reports.
The upcoming extraordinary European Union summit on March 6 will also serve as a platform to discuss a potential peacekeeping mission in Ukraine. President Volodymyr Zelenskyy is expected to represent Ukraine at the summit.
It is therefore important for us to exchange on how to further support Ukraine and on the principles that should be respected going forward. The EU and its member states are ready to take more responsibility for Europe's security. We should therefore be prepared for a possible European contribution to the security guarantees that will be necessary to ensure a lasting peace in Ukraine. From the invitation letter from European Council President Antonio Costa to summit participants.
The governments of the UK and France are working on a plan to deploy up to 30,000 soldiers in Ukraine. However, such a number is insufficient, according to Roman Kostenko, Secretary of the Parliamentary Committee on National Security, Defense and Intelligence. Ukraine is currently negotiating with partner countries to ensure that any future military contingent overseeing a potential ceasefire is not limited to protecting key infrastructure, but also patrols Ukraine's airspace and maritime zones.
We believe that if our partners and allies are discussing the possible deployment of these contingents to ensure long-term peace and security in Ukraine, it is entirely reasonable to also consider protecting Ukrainian airspace, particularly through patrols by our allies' aircraft.
Additionally, a spokesperson from Ukraine's Ministry of Foreign Affairs highlighted the need for an enhanced presence in the Black Sea, given that, according to Ukrainian authorities, Russia has not abandoned its intentions to disrupt freedom of navigation. Reported by Sergei Kulas, Valeria Nekapelova, UATV News. German Chancellor candidate Friedrich Merz has proposed strengthening Germany's own military while also opening negotiations with the UK and France to expand their nuclear support for other European countries. He argues that Germany should not rely entirely on the US nuclear umbrella for protection.
I strongly welcome the fact that the UK is once again seeking closer ties with Europe and the European Union. I still hope we can convince the Americans that it is in our shared interest to maintain strong transatlantic relations. I continue to hope we can preserve them.
According to The Telegraph, France has expressed readiness to deploy its nuclear deterrence capabilities to help defend Europe. This could involve stationing nuclear-armed fighter jets in Germany. Such discussions have gained traction following US statements about a potential troop withdrawal from the continent. During the Munich Security Conference on February 14, US Vice President J.D. Vance criticized the state of democracy in EU countries and signaled that Europe could no longer take unconditional American support for granted. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy, speaking at his press conference Ukraine the Year 2025, once again emphasized the urgent need for a unified European armed forces. According to Zelenskyy, Europe must be self-reliant, given the ongoing threat from Russia and the uncertainty surrounding US support.
I believe there are weaknesses in Europe's security. This isn't about one specific country, it's a broader issue. All these vulnerabilities were first seen in Ukraine. Because of the war, we have taken significant steps. We increased production, strengthened our military. Our army now numbers 800,000 troops. Yes, we had to do this due to tragedy. Europeans must also strengthen their defense capabilities and invest resources in their own security, because they need to rely on themselves.
As a first step toward a unified European army, Zelenskyy has proposed Ukraine as a unifying platform for European defense cooperation. He described this not as an experiment, but as a crucial security pilot project.
This contingent could be based in Ukraine. We would all work together. We would develop strategies, exchange technological and drone knowledge. Those who need it would receive training in ground combat and in dealing with a highly technological enemy. All of this is essential for security. It ensures peace of mind for everyone. I believe that today, Ukraine is the real example. I believe that today, there is a real desire to provide Ukraine with security guarantees and to end the active phase of this war. And this example could serve as the foundation for building a European armed force. Even if no new legal framework exists yet, it can still be created based on the contingent.
At a joint meeting between the European Commission and the Ukrainian government in Kyiv on February 24th, European Commissioner for Defense Andrius Kubilius stated that Europe's common goal is security peace for Ukraine through strength.
We look for possibilities to improve supply of components and raw materials, very much important for defense industry of Ukraine, including nitrocellulose. Second, to look into possibilities how we can assist for development of joint projects of Ukrainian defense industry with European defense companies. And third one, development of common capability targets and flagships in order really to include Ukrainian needs into our planning process.
Kubilius also identified a fourth point: using existing EU defense industrial programs to benefit Ukraine. The need for Europe to take charge of its own security was also emphasized by Czech Prime Minister Petr Fiala in a special speech marking the third anniversary of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine.
We must significantly increase defense spending to 3% of GDP within the next few years. The international order is undergoing its most profound transformation since the fall of communism. This does not mean that the United States is no longer our ally. Petr Fiala, Prime Minister of the Czech Republic, in a special speech on the third anniversary of Russia's war against Ukraine.
Despite these discussions, Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelenskyy remains convinced that NATO remains the simplest and most reliable way to guarantee security for both Ukraine and Europe as a whole. However, if NATO membership remains out of reach for Ukraine, he argues that the only option left is to build NATO within Ukraine itself. Reported by Serhiy Kulas, Yulia Granovskaya, UATV News.